I feel like this is something that started happening the more people just started having more and more sex out here. And don't get me wrong, it's not like people weren't having sex back in the day. I just feel like it became a lot more mainstream over the 2000s and more so during the 2010s, which you could argue was right around the peak of
The royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
Welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who likes his women the same exact way he likes his yogurt. He is also a man who may include jumping to conclusions to his cardio routine. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. And I am here... Actually, why the hell am I here? Let me look at the content. Yeah, I'm here to not take any sides. Normally I tend to take one side versus the other. Oh, women this, so sometimes I'll stand for the men. Sometimes guys do A, B, C, D, and I kind of stand to try and correct the men. But this time, I don't really think I'll be taking too much of a side, really. I intend on being particularly neutral, since most of what I'll be discussing this episode is more abstract or just more definition and things that you can do or things to do. I'm not really choosing a side on this one. This one I feel like is going to touch on both genders, and some people might not like others, other people might not either. And hopefully, maybe after you've listened all the way, then you can probably have your own opinion on it, and then you can tell me if you like it or you don't. Of which, should you like it, should you not like it, should you have a different form of feedback, or should you want to suggest a potential topic and or potential guest that I can have on the podcast, then the DMs are usually open and the social media links are usually in the description. And, if you don't feel like checking the description, maybe it might be too much work, or maybe you can't find the description, then of course you can listen all the way till the end. As always, I will usually mention the social media at the end of the episode, so you can just listen all the way till the end and not have to worry about that. But all in all, I do thank you so much for listening so far, and I do hope that you listen all the way till the end. Now, I want to kick things off by talking about the idea of sex. Now, it's not like I'm trying to get into the nitty-gritties of it. I just want to try and explain something that some people believe. Actually, I'd argue a lot of people believe nowadays, which probably might not be as accurate as you think. Now, all of this stemmed from a clip that I saw on IG, which I want to play for a bit, then give my thoughts on it, because I feel like the sentiments that are going to be expressed in the video are very reminiscent of stuff that a lot of people have been thinking and feeling of late, but I do feel like in relation to sex, it's probably a result of the times. But let me not give too much thought into it and let the clip play, then I can give my thoughts on it. So, without further ado...
Actually saw a certain post, it was actually a video of a guy saying that, sex is overrated. I don't know what you guys think, but interesting enough, for comment section, I saw ladies saying, yeah, by the way, me, I tell people that I don't like this thing, and wananishanga sana, they say that I'm weird. I don't know, but it was actually interesting because it was coming for a guy, and basically he was saying that intimacy, of course intimacy is just not sex, like it has a lot to it, but I'd like to know your thoughts, guys. Do you feel like sex is overrated? Are you the kind of person who likes it or not? Ama umeachia wanyama wa pori.
Okay, particularly interesting question. Do I think it's overrated, or have I left it to, as she says, wanyama wa pori? Now, honestly speaking, I feel like a lot of people do share this sentiment, where they say that sex is overrated, and it is a perfectly valid thing to say. Now, am I on the side of sex being overrated? That's a different story, because while I don't disagree with what it is that people are saying in the idea that sex is overrated, I personally feel like the issue isn't that it's overrated, because I honestly don't think that it is, but rather the fact that I believe that it is overused. I think sex is overused, not necessarily overrated. And I know it sounds like I'm contradicting myself from 2 seconds ago, but what I don't disagree with is people having that opinion that sex is overrated, not the fact that, sex is overrated. That one I don't entirely agree with it. Just mostly because sex in and of itself, under particularly good conditions, when done by two people who care about each other quite a bit, and they not only do it for their pleasure but also for their partner or partner's pleasure, that usually makes sex pretty dope. And the people that do quite a bit of it tend to talk about how sex is so great, sex is amazing, blah blah blah. But now the issue is that, fine, yes, it is great and it's dope and it feels amazing, but the fact that it gets used as an alternative for so many things, and that in itself is done a little too much, does make it actually get to a point where people do get quite tired, because it's like they've been getting it shoved down their throats, or it's been such a singular or just narrow-minded option for so many things that it gets to a level where someone is like, honestly, it's just sex, or, why do we just have to do sex? And there's multiple instances of this, whether you're looking at it from the relationship sense, whether you're looking at it from just out here in these streets. There's so many different instances where you can talk about how sex is overused. If you're looking at it in the entertainment industry, it's been used in advertising quite a bit. It's also been used in quite a number of movies and series, to the point where I'm sure there's people who log into Netflix and they're like, I just hope I can get a series or a movie that doesn't have one sex scene or sexual innuendo in it, just because they've gotten that many. And of course, there's going to be varied amounts of it, and some people are going to talk about how the sex scenes are done well or they're done poorly, or some are a little too explicit or not. But the thing is, it gets done quite a bit. So of course it's going to get to a point where guys are like, okay, if that's all that you're pushing for, and then someone is just trying to have sex and the next person is just trying to have sex, of course people are gonna see it as overrated. Also, if it's the only thing that people are talking about, of course it's going to be seen as overrated. Then you move it on to the relationships, and it gets even worse than that, because now you're looking at instances where people are basically trying to resolve everything or resolve a lot of things with sex, or they are using sex as a gift. And ladies, this is something that you guys are particularly good at, or should I say you guys just do a little too much. And I'm not saying all of you, it's just quite a number of you have a tendency to do such a thing. And the fact that there's people that just put so much emphasis on the sex that they forget to put emphasis on just about anything else. And I feel like this is something that started happening the more people just started having more and more sex out here. And don't get me wrong, it's not like people weren't having sex back in the day. I just feel like it became a lot more mainstream over the 2000s and more so during the 2010s, which you could argue was right around the peak of the sexual revolution, or the female sexual revolution, whatever you want to call it. And as such, like, people stopped paying as much attention in a lot of other things, and they were like, you know what, if we can use a bunch of sex, this thing will probably sell. And it has had particularly positive results for a while, up until probably just recently, where people kind of started expressing fatigue towards it. So for the most part, people just started getting tired of sex recently because it was just thrown at our faces so damn much. And what I would probably say is, if we could replace a lot of the sex that is out there with a little bit more intimacy, then maybe we would have people not say this as much. And the reason I say this is because there was a clip that I once saw where a guy was busy talking about how he values intimacy more than he does sex, because when you look at it nowadays, people are willing to give sex a lot more, but intimacy is something that is reserved for someone that is super close to you, or like you have a particularly strong bond with. And the example that he gave was actually pretty solid, where he was talking about how babes nowadays can give it up and go and shag a guy, but if you were to ask any of those same babes if they'd cook for a guy, you'd probably find them saying that they'd only cook for a guy if that's like their boyfriend or their husband. And most will probably say husband, but boyfriend is even more of a debate. So you look at it, intimacy has kind of taken the place that sex used to have. So of course, while intimacy can also have its moments of overuse, I do think that the fact that they've kind of swapped positions has made it such that people look at sex as if it's a little too much. Which is why I'm a very big believer in the fact that sex is overutilized and intimacy is underutilized. Or as some people might try to say it, sex is overrated and intimacy is underrated. But I would much rather use utilize because, like I said earlier, I don't think it's overrated, it's just that it's been overused. But then again, I could be wrong about that, and you are welcome to have your thoughts on it, and you can give feedback via the DMs. But either way, I am going to leave it at that and move it on to our main topic of this episode. Now, normally amongst guys, there are certain statements that we do tend to use every so often. And usually, depending on the situation, you will find that guys will have some particularly common statements that they would use. Like, for example, if a guy is spending too much time with his babe, or he decides to choose his babe over his homies, or a babe over his homies, it is very common to hear terms like bros before hoes. Which is kind of like the warning where it's like, you should always appreciate your bros and give them some priority over just some random babe. And, in some cases, you can say that that's valid. But there are other statements that do tend to be made every so often, which are supposed to serve as a warning to men to kind of deter them from making the mistake of trying to be with certain individuals, certain women, that just might not be good for them. Now, one of the more common ones that usually applies to a guy that is trying to wife a babe that the homies know has definitely been around is a term where they say that you can't turn a hoe into a housewife. And while some people might argue the truth or the false in that, the truth of it is a statement that a lot of guys make, and it is made with quite a lot of warning at hand, basically telling them that if a baby's a hoe, it is neither your place nor in your ability to turn her into something that she's not, which is not a hoe. And it is something that guys will usually tell other guys. But in consideration of the fact that guys usually say this to other guys, what about the women? What about the ladies out here and them potentially dating a guy that was busy hoeing around? Is there something that is said to them? Now, I'm not going to lie and tell you that I've thought this through because I've never really thought of this question up until I stumbled across a particularly interesting video where some guy was busy talking about how apparently guys aren't supposed to turn a hoe into a housewife, but what happens to all of the ladies that are with guys or that are supposed to be with guys who are like community dicks, liars, and cheats and all? Like, what exactly do you say to them? And when this actually hit me, it did kind of show me that maybe it might sound like we're very hypocritical about this, but the truth of it is the same teaching usually will apply to them, and I think most people should probably understand the main point in all of it. But before I can say too much about it, I'm gonna let the clip play, then I can get into the comments and my thoughts on it, because I feel like this is something that definitely needs to be discussed, because this is one of those debates that you'll find both genders having whenever they're going at each other's throats. So let me not take too much time and just get into the post. So without further ado...
Oh, you can't turn a hoe into a housewife, but women are supposed to turn felons, cheaters, community dicks, and liars into kings. If you can make it make sense, I'll listen, I promise.
Okay. Particularly interesting question of trying to make it make sense. And okay, can I try to make sense out of it? No, not really. Just mostly because I don't believe that either. But then again, there are some guys that probably believe that, and I'll kind of leave it up to them. Just mainly because I don't know how to defend something I can't actually believe in all that well. But anyways, with that said, let me get into the comments of this entire thing, just mostly because I believe that there is something to pick from all of this before I can get into my thoughts on it. So the very first comment said, and I quote, "How about pick better men? How about men don't lie about who they are and manipulate women to get what they want and get control because they find it funny to play a woman?" End quote. Okay, so this comment was made by a woman, and I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I feel like there's a way this babe is avoiding accountability here. Not that, people can't be manipulated. It's just, I feel like both sides do a shit ton of manipulation all the time. I don't see why she should be the one to be like, oh, the problem is that men out here are manipulative. Like, if you're the common denominator in all of this manipulation, not unless if these guys are all using different tactics all the time, then you should have picked up something out of this. Like, you can't be the common denominator and say that the problem is everyone else. In the great words of Cat Williams, if you say all the niggas ain't shit, maybe the problem is you who keeps dating ain't shit niggas. But anyways, with that said, let me move on to the next comment, which says, and I quote, "The rules never apply to men, apparently," end quote. And I believe that these rules also do apply to men. At least I do believe that the rules that I'm going to give do apply to men just as much as they apply to women. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think they apply the exact same way. There are going to be differences here and there, but I do believe that the rules actually do apply to both sides. The problem is, y'all have a thing where you guys like to celebrate a transformation process, and most guys don't really want to do that. So more often than not, you'll find yourself in a situation where you want Russell Wilson, but you're dating Future and you want Future to turn into Russell Wilson, which is usually a wild thing. But, then again, considering that you guys do have that thought process of, I can change him, then maybe that's how you end up in some of those situations. But anyways, with that said, let me leave that and move on to the very next comment, which says, and I quote, "The funny thing is that I've seen way more women change for a good man than I've seen men change for a good woman," end quote. And I actually do believe you. I do think that there are more women that are quote unquote changing for a good man than men who are changing for a good woman. And the reason why I'm saying quote unquote changing is because a lot of times you will find that women will kind of repurpose and remake themselves to suit a particular need or desire. And I'm not saying that guys don't do this. Of course, there are tons of guys who do that. But there's a lot of instances where you'll find that a babe will basically choose to or try to look like something that she isn't because she's trying to get with a certain kind of guy. You will see a babe automatically shift how she behaves and acts, all because she started being with a particular kind of guy that she doesn't want to lose, mostly because she sees some level of benefit that she wouldn't want to lose in that. And this is something that you see quite a bit. For most guys, they can only keep up such an act for a particularly short time, so of course it's gonna look like women do it a hell of a lot more. With guys, you usually have to begin the change by yourself first before you can even pull the babe. But the whole, when a babe pulls me in, I'm gonna change. There's such rare instances of such things happening, and normally they're even almost considered as miracles. And I'll explain why, at least this happens, not necessarily the miracles, but the other part. But, then again, I could be considered wrong for saying what it is that I'm saying. But with that said, let me get off the comments and now get into my thoughts on it. First of all, I believe the reason why we say the quote, "Don't turn a hoe into a housewife," or "You can't turn a hoe into a housewife," is actually quite simple. There's like maybe two main reasons that I can give for it. And the first one is we acknowledge that change is personal and it should be your decision. So me finding this gorgeous babe that I see who's really good in A, B, C, and D, and I'm like, you know what, I'd really want to bag this babe and make her mine, yada yada yada. Like, I know all of that is great, but the thing is, whenever shit hits the fan, or in case things get dicey, most people have a tendency to return back to how it is that they behaved or what it is that they used to do. And I'm not talking about, I picked up a hooker, I tried to make her better, then when we had money problems, she went back to fucking. No, like, this is just regular everyday issues. You can find it if the two of you are having issues with your relationship. A babe that's been used to hoeing around can very easily meet up with a different dude or go start interacting with a different guy and start hoeing around. Like, guys have done this as well. It's not particular to one gender or the other. You just find shit like this happening. So instead of making someone become a caricature or a different version of themselves for you, you might as well leave them, let them choose to make that change on their own, And once they've made that change, you go and you choose to be with them. Not picking up a babe and listening to the fact that they're like, oh, I want to settle down, even though they're still doing dumb shit, and then thinking, you know what, if I have a little bit more hope, if I stick it out through this and that more bullshit, then maybe she'll change. Nah, there's no need to do that. If she does want to change, let her put in the change herself, and then you guys can start making something happen. Then the second reason that comes with this is we don't want to get the scraps that other men have left. And I know it sounds disrespectful, it sounds vulgar, but let me just cook with this one. All right. So the issue that we tend to have is that a lot of times whenever a babe has been around, oftentimes it started from some level of trauma that she got from a guy. Okay, so she goes ahead, she gets traumatized by a guy, she decides, you know what, fuck dudes, she's gonna go fuck around. Fine, cool. She goes, she fucks around, or maybe, it wasn't even one guy who did it, maybe it was a bunch of guys that did it. But either way, she's been traumatized in some way, shape, or form. She has a bunch of healing she needs to do. Maybe she needs therapy. But she's fucking around. And whatever guy she's ending up with, she's not ending up with him for particularly long. But she ends up with you. Fine. Cool. She might be a good babe underneath all of that. But having to undo the kind of damage that's been done by previous niggas. And on top of that, taking in numerous dick actually does tend to affect women quite a bit mentally. Like, the kind of work that you have to do to get her from that damaged position onto a place where she's actually a good babe is so immense that it is absolutely crazy. And on top of that, you have to be willing to take on the fact that this babe will still be having tantrums, this babe is still going to be causing a bunch of issues here and there, and you guys are probably gonna have a couple of negative interactions here and there that probably shouldn't have happened if she wasn't hoeing around and collecting trauma previously. So you have to take in all of that, and you have to put in the effort, not just, the typical relationship effort, but the added effort of helping undo whatever bullshit other niggas did. And you look at the kind of work that you need to do all of that, and the fact that you could have done a hell of a lot less with another babe that had a lot less issues, and you realize that the juice just isn't worth the squeeze. Like, it just wasn't worth it to actually do all of that. And so, as a result of that, of course, we are going to say, out of these two reasons that I mentioned, that you can't turn a hoe into a housewife, and even though you think you could, you probably shouldn't. But with that said, let's talk about the community dicks, the liars, the cheaters, and so on. Now, first of all, I want to acknowledge that yes, there are people and everyone is deserving of love. But at the very same time, it is also not women's job to fix these niggas. Like, let's just say it for what it is. A lot of these guys that are, ensuring that they're community dick and they screw everything and everyone that comes across, like, at the end of the day, that is their option to do that, and it is not up to you to change them from that into a monogamous, faithful man to you. That shit is not going to happen, not unless if they themselves choose to do it or try to do it. Because you will try to keep them honest, you will try to make them have little to no temptations because you'll try to monitor everything. Hell, you could probably even be sucking his dick every single morning before he goes to work. But guess what? If this nigga likes being community dick, he's gonna continue being community dick. Even though he told you that he doesn't want to be it anymore. If he wants to stop being community dick, he has to put in that effort to stop being community dick. Same thing with the liars, same thing with the cheaters and the felons. It usually has to start from within. Because the one thing that most people never like to acknowledge is the fact that change in and of itself is a personal thing. And the day that you get that will be the day that you stop trying to change people so hard. And I know there's someone that's gonna be like, oh, but for some of these situations, the only way you can change is if you meet the right person. Or, oh, once I met the right person, everything changed for me. No, none of that is true. Actually, I'm going to argue that whatever's being said there is pure bullshit. No, you met someone that you weren't willing to lose, so you decided that you were going to change for them. It's not that they made you change. It's not that they had the biggest hand in making you change. A lot of that was very personal. It's just that it was influenced by them to some degree. So when you look at it and you start thinking about how, oh, you know, this babe has been with this guy, but she managed to change him. I think I have a chance with this other guy. Fam, like, don't even bother. If that guy isn't already in a journey of change, then the chances that you could hypothetically change him are pretty close to none. And even though you could try, then there's a pretty good chance that you'll end up using so much effort, and after all that, you might not even feel like it was worth it. So I would argue that instead of expecting to change someone, or instead of expecting that someone will change you, you start making that change yourself, or you let them start making that change themselves, so that if you guys are to find each other, you guys find each other in a much better state, in a much better place in your lives. And I know there's instances where you look at it and you're like, I don't know if I'll ever get a chance with someone this amazing, or a chance with someone like this ever again. And I promise you, even though you think that's the case, I don't think that the juice is worth the kind of squeeze that you're going to have to put just so that you can get the kind of juice you want. All right. So all that to say, expecting you to turn any adult into anything at this day and age is quite sad. So probably you shouldn't try. But, you know, at the same time, it is also an indicator that you do see the good in people, which is a good thing. But at the very same time, the fact that you think that you can change someone to some degree could be viewed as hubris, which isn't also such a good thing. But anyways, all in all that I am saying, and let me just conclude by saying this, is if they're a hoe, they're a hoe. So don't even try to change them. This is regardless of gender. If they're a hoe, they're a hoe. So don't try to change them. The best that you can do is find them when they are in the process of change, or at least a fairly advanced level of their process of change, where they're making significant strides forward, such that you don't necessarily have to change them per se. All you will do is assist where necessary, and basically just try to be with them for the remainder of that journey. And for the most part, I do believe that that is probably the best strategy. Although then again, I could be wrong about this. Maybe I'm chatting a bunch of shit. Maybe I don't totally understand, or maybe I'm just trying to be a pick-me for no side at all. Either way, I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open on IG. It is at the breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the breaktime podcast. On X, it is at bagakthed. And on Bluesky, it is at the breaktimepod.bsky.social. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.